Ladies and gentlemen, today I invite you to consider the extraordinary resilience that resides within us all. There is a woman who rises after every fall, and she is not bound by the stories of defeat or the weight of her mistakes. She is a woman who embraces the impermanence of all things, the fleeting nature of success and failure alike. We live in a world that demands perfection, a world that tells us that our value lies in how flawlessly we navigate life's challenges. But in truth, this very striving for perfection is the cause of much suffering. For to seek perfection is to forget the essential nature of life itself, which is a constant ebb and flow, a never-ending dance between what is and what might be. The woman who rises after every fall understands this deeply. She knows that life is not a linear path of victories and defeats, but rather a series of moments, each one an opportunity to learn, to grow, to experience. The fall is not a defeat. It is simply the ground from which she will rise again, stronger, wiser, and more attuned to her own resilience. It is not in the rising that we find strength, it is in the falling. The fall, when fully embraced, reveals the hidden wisdom of our own limitations. To fall is to acknowledge that we are part of something greater than ourselves, something that is constantly shifting, evolving, and transforming. And it is this awareness that gives us the courage to rise once more. For the woman who rises after every fall, the fall is not something to avoid or fear. It is simply a part of the process. It is a teacher. A reminder that every end is the beginning of something new. The more she falls, the more she understands that there is no true failure, only the opportunity to begin again with a deeper sense of purpose. This woman knows, as we all must come to understand, that life is not something to be conquered or controlled. It is something to be experienced, to be felt in all its wild, unpredictable beauty. The path will always win, the seasons will always change, and we too will change along with them. When we face a fall, when we face a setback, it is a chance for us to reflect not on what we have lost, but on who we are becoming. Every moment of difficulty is an invitation to rise, not because we must, but because it is our nature to rise, to evolve, to continue on. So let us no longer see our falls as failures. Let us instead honor them as the stepping stones on our journey. For the woman who rises after every fall is not just strong, she is alive, fully awake, and deeply in touch with the rhythm of life. She is the embodiment of resilience, not because she is immune to hardship, but because she understands the transitory nature of it. Each time she rises, she carries with her the lessons of the past. And so do we all, if we are willing to listen, to feel, and to be present in the unfolding of our own story. May we all be as wise as the woman who rises, over and over again, embracing every fall as an essential part of our dance through life. Time, as we perceive it, is one of the greatest illusions of our lives. We often speak of time as though it is something external to us, a force that governs our actions, dictates our pace, and controls our existence. We divide it into neatly arranged chunks, seconds, minutes, hours, trapping ourselves within the rigid confines of the future and the past. But in truth, this linear conception of time is a creation of the mind, a tool for organizing experience, not a fundamental reality. Consider the way we measure time. We fixate on what is coming next, forever projecting ourselves into the future, constantly planning, striving, and worrying about what lies ahead. Our days become consumed with a seemingly endless to-do list, all in anticipation of future events that are yet to happen. We chase the next goal, the next promotion, the next vacation, always thinking that happiness, success, or peace will come once we arrive at that moment, that future. That is so far away, but yet always just out of reach. The future, in this sense, is always a destination that we believe will provide fulfillment, but it remains forever elusive, slipping through our fingers as we continue to live in expectation. At the same time, we are prisoners of the past. We look back at our experiences, replaying them in our minds over and over again, often stuck in regret or nostalgia. We replay our mistakes, wishing we could undo them, or we cling to our triumphs, seeking to relive the glory of bygone moments. Yet, no matter how much we reflect or long for what was, the past is gone. It no longer exists except as a memory in our minds. By constantly dwelling on what has been, we trap ourselves in a loop, unable to fully engage with the present. But what if time, as we think of it, is not real? What if the constant pull of the future and the heavy weight of the past are merely projections of the mind, distractions that keep us from experiencing the true nature of life? The present moment is the only reality we have, yet it slips by unnoticed because we are so often looking ahead or behind. We think we must chase something, always seeking the next experience, but the richness of life exists only in the here and now. When we free ourselves from the illusion of time, we discover a new way of living. We can begin to experience life as it truly is, not as something we need to plan, control, or measure, but as something we can simply live and feel. To step outside of time is not to abandon responsibility or goals, but to realize that the only moment that truly exists is the one we are in. It is in this moment, in the present, that we can feel the pulse of life, the connection to ourselves and the world around us. In letting go of the future and the past, we open ourselves to the eternal now. The illusion of time keeps us bound in an endless race towards an unreachable future, but by breaking free from these chains, we can rediscover a deeper, more fulfilling way of being. We can experience life not as a series of goals to be achieved, but as a flow of moments to be fully embraced. True freedom comes when we stop waiting for the future to unfold, and instead recognize that the present moment is the only place where life truly happens. We live in a world that constantly encourages us to gain control over our lives, our circumstances, and even our emotions. From the moment we are born, we are taught to plan, to manage, and to navigate life in a way that ensures stability and predictability. We are told that success comes to those who take charge, those who have a firm grip on their destiny, and those who keep things under control. But the deeper truth, one that is often counterintuitive, is that true freedom and fulfillment come not from control, but from letting go. Consider how much of our energy is spent trying to control the external world. We believe that if we control our environment, we will be happy. We pursue a perfect career, a perfect relationship, and the ideal circumstances, hoping that once we reach these goals, everything will fall into place. We chase after success, thinking that it will bring us peace, only to find that peace is elusive, always just beyond our grasp. The more we try to hold on to things, the more they slip away. The more we try to control, the more we become anxious, stressed, and disconnected from the flow of life. This need for control leads us into a constant cycle of striving, never fully content with what is, always focused on what could be. At the same time, we attempt to control our inner world. We try to manage our emotions, our thoughts, and our desires, thinking that by doing so we will become more peaceful or enlightened. We suppress our fears, deny our anger, or try to fix ourselves, believing that we must be perfect to be worthy or whole. But in doing so, we create a disconnection between who we truly are and who we think we should be. We build walls around our authentic selves, hiding our vulnerability in an attempt to maintain control over our inner experience. Yet this constant control only deepens our sense of separation from ourselves and from others. The true essence of freedom lies not in control, but in surrender. To surrender is not to give up or to resign ourselves to helplessness. Rather, it is to release the need to control the flow of life and to trust in the natural rhythm of the universe. It is to allow life to unfold as it will, without the constant interference of the mind trying to force outcomes. Surrender is an act of trust in ourselves, in others, and in the inherent wisdom of life. When we let go of the need to control, we allow ourselves to be more fully present, more open to the spontaneity of life, and more receptive to the wisdom that comes from simply being in the moment. Letting go does not mean giving up on our goals or dreams. It simply means releasing our attachment to how things should be and embracing the reality of what is. It means becoming comfortable with uncertainty, with not knowing what the next moment will bring. It is in this space of surrender that true growth happens. When we stop trying to control everything, we create room for new possibilities to arise, for creativity to flow, and for life to surprise us in ways we could never have imagined. We become more adaptable, more resilient, and more capable of responding to life's challenges with grace and ease. The paradox of control is that the more we let go, the more we truly live. By releasing the need to dominate life, we open ourselves to the fullness of our experience. We no longer resist what is, but instead flow with it, understanding that the dance of life is not one of rigid steps and calculated moves, but one of spontaneity, acceptance, and trust. Only in letting go do we become truly free. When we embrace the unpredictability of life, we find ourselves alive in ways we never thought possible, alive to the present moment, alive to the unfolding of each experience, and alive to the infinite potential that exists when we stop trying to control what is already unfolding around us. The nature of the self is one of the most profound and perplexing mysteries of human existence. We spend our lives thinking of ourselves as separate, distinct individuals, isolated from others and from the world around us. We identify with our bodies, our thoughts, our emotions, and the roles we play in society, believing that all of these things make us who we are. But when we look more deeply, we begin to realize that this sense of separation is, in fact, an illusion, a construct of the mind that creates a false sense of individuality and isolation. The idea of a separate self is rooted in the way we experience the world. We perceive ourselves as individuals, distinct from everything else, as if there is a boundary between me and not me. This perception is reinforced by our thoughts and language, which constantly reinforce the idea that we are separate from others. We talk about my body, my mind, my life as though these things belong to us alone, and as if there is a solid, unchanging identity behind them. But when we strip away these labels and ideas, we begin to see that there is no inherent, fixed self at all. What we call the self is simply a collection of experiences, thoughts, and sensations that arise and pass away in each moment, constantly changing and evolving. When we begin to observe ourselves more closely, we realize that we are not separate from the world around us, but deeply interconnected with it. Our bodies are made of the same elements as the earth, and we depend on the air, water, and food from nature to sustain us. Our thoughts and emotions are influenced by the people and experiences we encounter, and our actions ripple out into the world, affecting others in ways we may never fully understand. The sense of being a separate, isolated individual is simply a perspective, one that arises from the way we interpret our experiences. In truth, there is no sharp boundary between self and other. We are part of a vast, interconnected web of life. This understanding of the self as an illusion of separation can be a transformative realization. When we begin to see through the illusion of the separate self, we begin to experience life in a different way. We no longer see others as separate from ourselves, but as expressions of the same universal life force that flows through us all. The boundaries that we once perceived as solid and unchanging begin to dissolve, and we become more open, more compassionate, and more connected to the world around us. The realization that the self is an illusion also frees us from the need to cling to a fixed identity. When we believe that we are a separate self, we feel the need to protect and defend that self, constantly striving to maintain a sense of control and certainty. We become attached to our beliefs, our achievements, and our possessions, fearing that without them, we will lose our sense of who we are. But when we recognize that the self is not a fixed entity, but rather a fluid and ever-changing process, we can let go of these attachments and embrace life as it is, without the need to constantly control or define ourselves. This shift in perspective also allows us to release judgment. When we see ourselves as separate, we are more likely to judge others as different. As other, we categorize people based on their appearance, their beliefs, their actions, and we create divisions between ourselves and them. But when we recognize the interconnectedness of all beings, we begin to see others as reflections of ourselves, as expressions of the same consciousness that flows through us. Instead of seeing differences, we begin to see shared humanity, and this understanding fosters empathy, compassion, and love. The illusion of separation also plays a significant role in the way we experience suffering. When we believe ourselves to be separate, we experience pain and loss as something personal, as something that happens to us. We identify with our pain, and this identification intensifies our suffering. But when we begin to see that the self is not an isolated entity, but part of a larger whole, we can begin to view suffering in a different light. We realize that pain is not something that happens to us, but is simply a part of the natural ebb and flow of life, shared by all beings. This understanding can bring a sense of peace, as we learn to let go of the attachment to our personal suffering and embrace the universal nature of all experiences. Ultimately, the nature of the self is not something to be grasped or defined, but something to be experienced directly. The illusion of separation falls away when we allow ourselves to fully inhabit the present moment, when we let go of our need for identity and simply experience life as it is. In this space, we begin to realize that there is no me and you no self and other, there is only the continuous unfolding of life, one moment at a time. The more we awaken to this truth, the more we come to understand that we are not separate from the world around us, but deeply interconnected with it. We are not individuals in isolation, but expressions of the same vast, infinite consciousness that permeates all things. Letting go is often seen as a difficult, even painful process. We are conditioned to hold on to things, our possessions, our beliefs, our expectations, and we often think that by holding on, we can find security or meaning in life. But the art of letting go is not about giving up or abandoning responsibility. It is about embracing the fluid, unpredictable nature of life and allowing ourselves to flow with it rather than fighting against it. When we let go, we free ourselves from the illusions of control and certainty, opening ourselves up to a deeper experience of life. Life is inherently uncertain. We cannot predict the future or control the outcomes of our efforts. Despite our best planning, things do not always unfold as we expect them to. This uncertainty can be a source of anxiety, fear, and frustration. We try to cling to what we know, to control our circumstances, and to hold on to a vision of how things should be. But the more we try to force life into a particular shape, the more we resist its natural flow. The art of letting go is about acknowledging that uncertainty is an intrinsic part of the human experience, and that it is something we must learn to accept rather than avoid. To let go is to trust in the unfolding of life, trust in the process, and trust in ourselves. When we let go, we stop trying to force outcomes and allow things to be as they are. We stop struggling against the flow of life and learn to move with it, finding peace in the unknown. This doesn't mean we stop acting or making decisions, but rather that we stop attaching ourselves to specific outcomes. We can still set goals, work toward them, and take action, but we do so with the understanding that we do not control the future. Instead, we focus on what we can do in the present moment without the pressure of needing to control everything. Letting go also involves releasing attachment to the past. Many of us cling to memories, past successes, and even past failures. We think that by holding on to these experiences, we can somehow preserve the lessons we've learned or protect ourselves from future mistakes. But the past is gone. It is a collection of memories that live only in our minds. Holding on to the past only keeps us stuck, unable to move forward. Letting go of the past means acknowledging its lessons while allowing ourselves to be free from its hold. It is about learning to live in the present, where life is happening right now. The art of letting go also requires us to surrender our need for certainty. We often think that certainty brings safety, but the truth is, life is full of uncertainty, and it is only through embracing this uncertainty that we can truly live. The desire for certainty is rooted in fear, the fear of failure, the fear of being vulnerable. But when we let go of our need for certainty, we make space for creativity, spontaneity, and growth. We allow ourselves to be open to whatever comes, trusting that life will unfold as it is meant to, even if we do not always understand why. In learning to let go, we discover a deeper sense of freedom. We no longer feel the need to control or manipulate our circumstances, and instead we are free to experience life as it is. The more we let go, the more we realize that we do not need to have everything figured out. Life is not something to be controlled, but something to be lived imperfect, unpredictable, and always unfolding. By embracing uncertainty, we open ourselves up to new possibilities and experiences, allowing life to surprise us in the most beautiful and unexpected ways. Ultimately, letting go is an act of self-compassion. It is about accepting that we do not have all the answers, and that it is okay to not know what comes next. It is about giving ourselves permission to be human, to be imperfect, and to trust in the journey. In letting go, we free ourselves from the burden of needing to control everything, and we allow ourselves to be fully present in the wonder of life's unfolding mystery. Through this process, we find peace, clarity, and a deeper connection to ourselves and the world around us. The present moment, often referred to as the now, is one of the most powerful and elusive aspects of our experience. We often take it for granted, focusing instead on the past or future, but when we stop to truly consider it, we realize that the now is not just a fleeting moment in time, it is the only moment that truly exists. The past is a collection of memories, and the future is nothing more than a series of projections, but the present, the now, is the ever-present reality that we are constantly inhabiting, even if we rarely acknowledge it. The infinite nature of the now lies in its boundlessness. The present moment is not confined by time or space. It is the only place where life is truly happening. We cannot experience the past or future directly, only through the lens of memory or anticipation. But the now is the realm of direct experience, where all our senses are engaged and where everything we encounter is real and immediate. Yet, because we are often distracted by our thoughts, emotions, and worries, we miss the vastness of this moment and rush through it, unaware of its infinite potential. When we immerse ourselves fully in the now, we begin to recognize its expansive nature. Every breath we take, every sensation we feel, every thought that passes through our mind exists within the present moment. In truth, there is no other moment. The future is always just a step ahead, and the past can never be recaptured. The now is always here, and in this sense it is infinite. It stretches out, endlessly present, regardless of how we perceive it. When we allow ourselves to be fully aware of the present, we experience it as an unfolding, boundless continuum of life, always moving forward, but always encompassing the fullness of existence in this moment. Part of what makes the now infinite is that it is not subject to the limitations of time. Time is a construct of the mind, a tool we use to organize our experiences and measure change. But the now is not bound by this tool. It exists outside the framework of past and future. The now is where all possibilities coexist, where life is constantly being created and recreated. When we are fully present, we are in direct contact with the flow of life, with the current of existence itself, which is constantly changing and yet always the same. In the now, we encounter the totality of life in its raw, unfiltered form. This infinite nature of the now also invites us to let go of the need to control or predict. The past and future often bring with them a sense of anxiety as we become preoccupied with what has happened or what might happen. But in the now, there is no need for such worry, because everything we need is already here. By releasing our attachment to the future and the past, we allow ourselves to sink into the infinite richness of the present moment, where we can experience life without the weight of expectation. When we realize the infinite nature of the now, we also begin to experience the fullness of our own being. We are not defined by the roles we play or the labels we attach to ourselves. We are, in essence, simply beings in the now. Our thoughts, feelings, and identities are temporary, constantly shifting with the flow of time. But the awareness of the present moment, this simple act of being, remains constant, and it is in this awareness that we connect to the infinite part of ourselves. We are both part of the now and the witness to it, and in this sense we are part of something far greater than our individual experience. The infinite nature of the now invites us to experience life with wonder, to see each moment as a fresh opportunity to engage with existence in all its fullness. It is a reminder that life is not something that will happen later or has already passed, but something that is always unfolding in this moment. In embracing the infinite nature of the now, we awaken to the vast potential of each moment, and in doing so, we begin to live more fully, more deeply, and more authentically. The now is not just a moment in time, it is the infinite space in which all life exists, constantly renewing and reimagining itself with each breath we take. Perfection is an ideal that many of us strive for, whether in our appearance, our achievements, or our relationships. It is a vision of flawlessness, a state where everything aligns perfectly and all problems vanish. We often believe that reaching perfection will bring us lasting happiness, satisfaction, and peace. But the truth is that perfection is a mirage, an illusion that can never truly be attained. In the pursuit of this unattainable ideal, we find ourselves caught in a cycle of dissatisfaction, self-criticism, and endless striving. The idea of perfection is rooted in comparison and expectation. We constantly measure ourselves against standards set by others or by societal norms, thinking that if we meet these standards, we will be worthy, successful, or lovable. We are bombarded with images of perfection in the media, perfect bodies, perfect careers, perfect families, and we internalize these ideals, believing that we must achieve them to be accepted.